Okay, I got 7 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts?
Here.
Counselor Stinnett?
Here.
Youth Representative? Counselor Savage? Here. Counselor Fleck?
Here.
Counselor Soulsby?
Here.
Counselor Urban?
Here.
Mayor Gowing?
Here. Okay, item 3, there's no items to be added to the agenda. Item 4, appearances of interested citizens for items not on the agenda. This is the time for citizens to comment on items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by presiding officer, provide their name and address, and will be allowed 5 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for public hearing may be provided only in that hearing. Comments on agenda items may be taken prior to council discussion on that item. Council will not engage in any discussion or make any decision based on public comments at this time. However, the council may take the comments under advisement for discussion and action at a further council meeting. Okay, we've only had one person sign up to speak on items not on the agenda, and that would be Mr. Bruce Kelch at 78340 Haldeman Road.
Correct. Yep. I just wanted to comment on the Community Sharing Warming Center. The season's over, and it was open 9 nights, and it was a successful pilot program using the county's pallet shelters and the fenced space prepared by the city. There were no incidents, and the reviews of the warming center were very positive. Having individual cabins that were warm and secure for the overnight guests was greatly appreciated. So my thanks to the city, community sharing, its staff, and volunteers for making this happen in the midst of a pandemic. And bravo and congratulations. As the city looks at housing needs in Cottage Grove, I encourage the city to also look at transitional housing. The city and the county have invested in the current site and the 18 pallet shelters. It would be good to discuss how best they can be used to help those who are unhoused and need of support for their transition to a better life. We know support services would be needed to have a successful transitional housing program, but I also know there are individuals and key organizations in our town that would applaud the city's efforts to support the creation of transitional housing and help and support such a program. Thank you.
Thank you. We also had somebody submit a written comment, Mr. Ed Ryman at 1225 Edgewater Lane, and I'll just read his in case you guys don't have it in your packets. I would like to submit the idea of a speed limit of 25 miles an hour inside the city limits of Cottage Grove. We now have a hodgepodge of 25 here and 35 there, sometimes in clearly congested like Corner Park and Main and in front of the fast food row, business and pedestrian areas. A citywide 25 mile an hour limit enforced would be less confusing for everyone, police, our citizens, and visitors alike, and would make Cottage Grove safer. Okay, so with that, we will move on to, why does mine say item 6? Oh, item 5, there is no public hearings. Item 6 is consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Second.
I have a motion with the second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 7, resolution and ordinances. Ordinance amending the City of Cottage Grove Municipal Code Title 1-8 regarding annexation standards and procedures to allow extraterritorial connections. Mr. Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So City Council discussed allowing extraterritorial connections for properties outside the city limits at the February 8th and March 22nd City Council meetings. Legal counsel has prepared 2 ordinances for council to consider that would allow extraterritorial connections outside the city limits. Both ordinances authorize connections outside the city boundaries and within the city's UGB. The first ordinance, which is Ordinance 1, would be adopted by the council solely pursuant to the city's Charter Chapter 4 without DLCD notice or 2 required hearings. As noted above, Ordinance 1 would only allow for extraterritorial connections outside city limits and within the urban growth boundary. This ordinance was presented at the previous city council meeting and was given ordinance number 31339. The second ordinance, Ordinance 2, also addresses potential connections beyond the city's UGB. It, therefore, is a land use regulation requiring adoption of Type 4 legislative action pursuant to Cottage Grove Municipal Code 14.41.500. Its adoption would require 45 days notice to Oregon's Department of Land Conservation and Development and hearings before both the Planning Commission and the City Council prior to council adoption. Proposed sections 18.05.060, 18.05.070, and 18.05.080 in Ordinance number 1 reflect state law requirements for water and sewer connections on rural lands as required by Oregon Revised OAR 660-011-0060 and OAR 660-011-0065. Under either ordinance, extraterritorial connections would allow for properties to connect to the city utilities that don't meet city and or state annexation requirements. Both proposed ordinances have strict requirements for connection approved, including signing and recording a consent to annex agreement. The agreement would require the property owner to annex upon the request by the city once the property meets city and state annexation criteria. Requests for extraterritorial connections are usually received for properties that have failing water wells or septic systems. Staff receives 1 to 2 requests per year for extraterritorial connections outside the UGB. Staff has received 1 request to connect to the city water system outside the UGB in the past 4 years. Ordinance number 3139 at Ordinance 1 has been available for the public for at least 1 week. It can be adopted tonight at 1 meeting. If council wants to consider adoption of Ordinance 2, staff will need to give notice to DLCD and schedule it for the Planning Commission for a Planning Commission hearing. The council hearing and possible adoption would be scheduled within 2 to 3 months. Recommendation is for the City Council to consider to either adopt Ordinance 3139, amending the City of Cottage Grove Municipal Code, Title 18 regarding annexation standards and procedures to allow extraterritorial connections within the UGB, or to begin the process to consider Ordinance number 2, which would amend City of Cottage Grove Municipal Code Title 18 regarding annexation standards and procedures to allow extraterritorial connections within and outside the UGB. So with that, I'm open for questions from council.
Mr. Myers?
And on Friday morning, there was a question regarding the consent to annex exhibit. It's the same exhibit for both ordinances, and so it's attached at the end of Ordinance 2. So it's the same exhibit that would be for both.
Ms. Soulsby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to inform you that Councilor Sennett just let me know that his internet has failed, and so he's trying to rejoin.
Thank you. Mr. Fleck?
So at the agenda session, Councilor Irvin had a great question about whether we could do both. Say a hybrid where it would go through the DLCD if it was outside the UGB, whereas it would go through this other process in Ordinance 1, for all other lands inside the UGB. Do we get a chance to talk to our legal folks about that?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to connect with them to talk to him today.
So I guess my next question would be then, could that be something that would come forward later as an amendment and maybe a separate process if it was outside the UGB? I can't imagine that we would do it, and I'm actually pretty reluctant to do it just because of the risk of, challenges. But I think that was a really good suggestion, and so I wanted to, follow up on it. So I guess at this point, I'll just move that the city council adopt ordinance number 3139 with the hope that in the future we can also look at the other process for outside the UGB.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any more discussion on that? Mr. Urban?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to reiterate that would like to see that option, the second ordinance option, available. I didn't see any reason other than just the headache of maybe getting it through the process to not go down that route to make it available. But a follow-up question to that would be, is that still a discretionary, or whose discretion is it to grant an application? Does that come back to council under the second ordinance, or some other body?
So Mayor, Councilor Urban, it's my understanding that it would, if we were to adopt a second ordinance, which would deal with connections outside the UGB, this one would govern between city limits and the UGB. A second one would be, it would be treated as a land use decision and go through that process. So if somebody applied to the city for a connection outside the UGB, we would certainly look at the criteria, see if it meets the criteria, then process it just as any application. We would give notice to DLCD and then go through the Planning Commission, and then ultimately it's the council to make the final decision, but then those decisions are appealable to a higher level. So you would be given the final decision provided that it doesn't get appealed. If it gets appealed, it could be reversed or upheld, either one.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I would like to hear Councilor Fleck. I hear some hesitation in going down that route, as if it could open us up to something that maybe we don't want to get into. Can you speak to that at all?
You bet. So in the past, and I shouldn't say currently, state law with LCDC and the whole Senate Bill 100, which created our land use process, was to reduce urban sprawl. And so, they've protected farmland and forest as part of that. And so the whole thing about reducing sprawl is that we're limited under the law to go outside of our urban growth boundary. And so you have to have exceptions, which I assume are laid out under state rules. I mean, I would have to do some more research into what that process is. But I think that the risk is that if we do decide to go outside the UGB and somebody challenges it, I think that puts us in, because of the state rules, we'd have to defend that exception. And that's why I'm somewhat reluctant, unless there was a really urgent need to go outside the urban growth boundary.
Thank you.
Ms. Savage?
Just for clarification, there has only been one application outside of the UGB in the last 4 years. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Savage, in my 4 years that I've been here, we've had one request to connect outside the UGB, and that was at the Mount View, the little community in Mount View. There was a home that was struggling to get drinkable water. I'm not sure how that got resolved, but out in the country, it's possible if your neighbor has a well, you could do a shared well, provided they're willing to do that. And yes, one in the 4 years I've been here. I noticed that Mr. Brasby's here. If he knows of any additional ones, he could pipe in.
Yes, we've had, not in 4 years, Councilman Savage, but we've had people out Galleryville Road ask, as well as a couple people in the area of Mountain View have asked to get on water. And basically, we've had to follow the rules laid out by the state. They have to show us there's a health hazard to pursue it any farther.
Thank you.
Any more questions, discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts,
Aye.
Counselor Stinnett,
Aye.
Counselor Savage,
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby,
Aye.
Counselor Fleck,
Aye.
Counselor Urban,
Aye.
Youth Representative. Okay, gotcha. Mayor Gowing.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, item 7B, application for a multiple unit property tax exemption MUPPET program for Square One Village. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors. Before the City Council is a revised application for the MUPPET program submitted by the property owner, Square One Villages of the Cottage Village Project Coalition Project at 1430 East Madison. The City Council adopted Ordinance number 3117 in December of 2019 to support development of all types of multifamily housing, multifamily affordable housing, market rate or government subsidized affordable housing through the use of tools to lower development or operational costs. The adoption of the MUPPET program was seen as a tool to encourage the development of much needed multiple unit housing within the city. The council also determined that the lack of development of multi-unit housing over the last 20 years demonstrates that multiple unit housing would not occur in this market without the MUPPET program. At the March 22nd, 2021 regular City Council meeting, Council directed staff to refine the presented memorandum, resolution, and packet to reflect different scenarios regarding the inclusion of the existing dwelling and without at the Cottage Village Coalition project on East Madison. While in the process of creating new estimates, staff was contacted by the applicant regarding an issue with their previous submittals. Dan Bryant, Executive Director of Square One Villages, and Bruce Kelsch, Chair of the Cottage Village Coalition, contacted staff via phone and email to state that their application presented by staff at the City Council meeting included details that are no longer part of the project's planning due to funding shortfalls. Mr. Bryant and Kelsch stated that the new plan was to take the existing single-family dwelling and convert it into an apartment in the rear of the building, and the front half would become the community spaces for the residents of the development. Those spaces previously were going to be part of the existing shop and garage. Additionally, in the period between March 23rd and April 5th, 2021, staff has received 8, and I believe actually 9 letters now of support for the project and/or correspondence relating to other state of Oregon programs for tax abatement that relieve the entire tax burden from the operator of projects that qualify. That program, the Low Income Rental Housing Property Tax Exemption, or LRPT, is like MUPPET in that it requires the agreement of most or all tax districts before consideration by council. The letters received are included in the attached staff report as Exhibit F. At this time, staff has completed the necessary work to provide council with the requested information regarding the MUPPET application by Square One Villages for the project at 1430 East Madison. Due to the changes to the application made by the applicant and the request from council to provide refined numbers regarding the 2 potential paths for this application, staff has drafted 2 resolutions for your consideration. One of the resolutions would grant the 10-year abatement to all improvements on the property, and the other would exclude the existing house and garage from the MUPPET program. For ease of the discussion, each resolution will be discussed separately. Resolution, all improvements included. The first, the applicant has provided the city with a revised narrative for their previous application. In this revision, they have stated that the existing single-family dwelling will now be converted into a studio / one-bedroom apartment in the rear of the building, and the remaining front portion to become the common meeting space for the entire development. In the applicant's initial application, the shop garage was going to be converted to accommodate the common meeting space, but due to a cash shortage, the applicant has decided to change course. This change is significant when considered with the adopted criteria of Section 3.10.050 public benefits. In this section, council has adopted the public benefit of development or redevelopment of blighted property. The definition of blighted has not been adopted into the city's municipal code, meaning council will need to decide whether the existing single-family dwelling meets the common definition of blighted, which is having severely detrimental effect, according to Google. The applicant has provided to council the home inspection report they commissioned as part of their due diligence before accepting the existing home and property. That report is 44 pages long and contains pictures and a bulleted list with issues for the home. Some of those issues are in this report, or some of those images from the report are attached to this memo for your reference. Additionally, Bruce Kelsch from the Cottage Village Coalition provided a letter laying out the expenses incurred by Square One Village to date to make the existing house habitable to their standards. That money, totaling approximately $30,000, went into a new roof and other health and safety upgrades. The applicant believes that the redevelopment of the home, as described, will take another $50,000. The letter from Mr. Kelsch is attached to this memo as well. If council agrees that the existing single-family dwelling is blighted, then the proposal from the applicant to convert and renovate the house would meet an explicit criteria of section 3.10.050. This finding would support the council adopting the resolution that includes all improvement value on the property being subject to the 10-year abatement program. Additionally, the applicant still has other public benefits as part of the larger project, as shown in the previous version of their application and included in the staff report to this memorandum. Those public benefits are open space, over required minimums, ADA facilities, on-site stormwater treatment, pedestrian-oriented design, common meeting spaces, and if approved by council, redevelopment of a blighted property. An additional public benefit not listed in section 3.10.050 provided by the applicant includes lowered rents to meet rates that of 50% of AMI. The second resolution for your consideration would be existing single-family dwelling and garage excluded. This resolution would limit the benefit of the 10-year tax abatement on improvements to just the 13 new cottages or tiny homes and their support infrastructure. As stated in the previous council meeting, the area and structures associated with the 13 dwellings and their support infrastructure meets the criteria of the MUPPET program by having 3 or more dwellings, being within a quarter mile of an LTD bus route, and having 1 or more public benefits as listed in section 3.10.050 public benefits. Their proposed public benefit proposed by the applicant are pedestrian-oriented design, stormwater treatment facilities, ADA facilities, common meeting space, and additional public benefit being lowered rents, meeting 50% of AMI. The attached resolutions have been prepared for council to consider, with the first granting a 10-year abatement to all improvements, which would mean council accepts the public benefit of redevelopment of a blighted dwelling. The second resolution would exclude the single-family dwelling that they're now proposing to convert to an apartment with meeting space from the 10-year abatement program, limiting the benefit to the 13 newer tiny homes or cottages and their support infrastructure. Recommendation is the council consider whether or not to accept the redevelopment of a blighted dwelling building as proposed by the applicant, allowing the 10-year abatement to apply to all structures improvements or to not. Pursuant to Chapter 3.10 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, the application meets the criteria as outlined in sections 3.10.020 and 3.10.050, showing location on or within a quarter mile of a bus route, 3 or more units, and public facilities or public benefits as described earlier. Let's see. The first resolution applies to all improvements. The second resolution provides the 10-year abatement to just the 13 structures. The cost associated with the approval of this application will be realized as revenues not received from the improvement value associated with either the newly constructed / redeveloped 14-unit multifamily development or only the 13 new dwellings, depending on council's decision. Estimates performed by staff with the support from Lane County Assessment and Taxation based on income versus expenses to assess value calculations show that if approved by the city, The city will be delaying approximately $6,100 to $7,900 per year over the 10 years of the program. At the completion of the 10-year period, the city will receive approximately $8,198 annually on the improvement area considered in the attached application. However, there are multiple mechanisms that the county can use to establish the assessed value of a development. For example, the estimates provided above are based on an income analysis of rents versus expenses, but there's an alternate method available for valuation that's based on construction costs. The third assessment methodology would not apply to multifamily development as it is a sales analysis. It is important to note that the numbers provided are estimates of the potential value of city taxes only and do not reflect the value of taxes delayed by other taxing districts, those being South Lane School District, South Lane Fire and Rescue, and Lane County. Again, please understand that these numbers presented here are approximate estimates based on declared values from applicants. And to quote Joe Leake, the commercial appraisal supervisor for Lane County Assessment and Taxation, again, these are just estimates. We won't have the final values until the tax roll certification in October. The applicant has paid a fee of $840 for you to consider this application. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, at this time I have 4 people signed up to speak on this, and I'll call you up in the order that I have them. And the first one is Bruce Kelch.
Thank you. Bruce Kelch, 78340 Haldeman Road. The council has before it 2 possible resolutions and 2 paths for granting MUPPET to Cottage Village. And as you'd expect, I'm advocating for the first one, the one that has a larger tax relief and a lower impact on the Cottage Village residents. We put forth several arguments in favor of this path, including the redevelopment conversion of the existing house as a blighted property. And the standards and guidelines for the Cottage Grove MUPPET program, number 11, development or redevelopment of blighted property, states, the term blighted is somewhat subjective. Applicants should supply the reasoning in making a determination that the subject property is blighted. We supplied our reasoning by submitting the initial inspection report of the house. SOE found the mouse-infested, under-insulated house with severe electrical problems and other issues below standard for renting, and invested in, and will continue to do so, and will redevelop the existing house, creating a community center for the Cottage Village and as an essential part of the village, as well as an apartment, and becoming the 14th housing unit in the housing co-op. Cottage Village is Square One's first rural project. We've been a pilot project, and as in all pilot projects, one learns along the way what works and what doesn't. SOV learned from its experience with Emerald Village up in Eugene and working with the city of Eugene, and coming to our city, to Cottage Grove, working with the city and working with us, has been quite a different experience, and they've learned new things. Cottage Village is an innovative solution to housing, creating truly affordable, safe housing and community for those who are greatly in need. The project makes it possible for low-income people to have stable housing and prevents them from becoming unhoused. In addition, Cottage Village creates community, dignity, and participation in a self-governing housing co-op. As I see it, Cottage Village is also a pilot project for the city in terms of a non-profit applying for tax relief in order to keep rents as low as possible for its residents. I know I've certainly learned a lot about MUPPET and LURPT since the council's last meeting and the differences between them, and I suspect many of you have as well. And we've learned these new acronyms and will hopefully be more fluent with them. I ask that we consider the lessons we've learned as we look at Cottage Village's application and its pilot MUPPET application. MUPPET is accomplishing what the city set out to do, which is encouraging developers to create new housing opportunities in Cottage Grove. At the last meeting, council approved MUPPET that will create 40 housing units, and tonight you'll be reviewing the MUPPET application for 80. That's an extraordinary record of what the impact of having a new program can do for housing in Cottage Grove. I see that granting MUPPET for Cottage Village is a bit more of a struggle. It doesn't quite fit. It's an innovative housing configuration, doesn't fit MUPPET in the same kind of way. And I'm sure council members have given a great deal of thought to the differences since last meeting. So I would encourage the council to grant MUPPET to Cottage Village for now, but also work to find a better path that provides greater relief to our project and future low-income affordable housing projects. The housing study that was done found there was a shortage of housing at all levels in Cottage Grove. There's more work to be done to encourage and support low-income housing in Cottage Grove. It's an investment in our citizens and our community. And as you review the terms and conditions that LURPD provides, you might see a path that would be an easier one and a better fit for something like Cottage Village. I know the council has lots to discuss tonight. I want to thank you again, the city and the council, for its support of Cottage Village. Our tiny house village is the feather in the cap of our town, in my opinion, a point of pride. It has garnered national attention as a rural model of what can be done when a rural community addresses a critical housing need. The council's and the city's support is a reflection of our community's good heart towards those in need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one I have signed up is Aslan Blackstone.
Being a genius is both a blessing and a curse, though I believe in neither.
Whoever's on the phone, you need to mute your phone. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Like, I swear, that's not me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council for allowing me the chance to speak tonight. I'm a little nervous. It's been a while since I've talked in front of anybody, so please bear with me. About a year ago when COVID hit and everybody's lives changed, mine actually didn't change that much. My days were spent at my parents' house. I was on disability. They lived 2 miles out of town. And my social interaction was incredibly limited. And in fact, the only interaction I really had was with my counselor on a weekly basis. And then COVID hit. And so then that was over the internet. And then in September, sorry, I'm going to get emotional and I apologize. In September, I moved into Cottage Village Co-op. And it has changed my life in ways that I never would have thought possible. And some amazingly positive and, well, I hope they're mostly positive. There's, some negative in there too, I'm sure, but everything is about balance. And, but when I moved in, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And it's become this amazing dream of this group of people that we come from all different backgrounds. Most of us, a lot of us are on disability. Some of us are running away from abusive situations. We have single parents. We have veterans. We have people who were born and raised in Cottage Grove and people that moved here from the East Coast. And each one of us were given a second chance when we were given our housing. For me personally, this is my first home ever and my first place on my own in over a decade. And for many others, they have spent years couch surfing, living in tents, and being in incredibly dangerous situations because there was no other option available. And when we heard about what was going on with the taxes, it did become a concern for us because any kind of increase is going to be felt for us. Some people live on $800 a month and they have to pay their rent with that, their utilities, buy toilet paper, everything that's not included in food stamps. And so everything is felt. There's only 13 houses right now. There will be the 14th with the apartment and the house, but we're a small co-op, and we've already lost one member whose financial situation changed, and we feel the loss of that one member. And so knowing that if we end up having to increase our carrying charges and increase our rent, that most likely more than half of us will not be able to live there. We won't be able to afford it. And so all of the work and effort that we've put in since September, we will lose. The garden area that we've been working on, the trees we've planted, we'll never get to see them grow and bloom. And all of these plans that we have for the future are going to be put on hold. And in some cases, just completely disappear. And so I just wanted to come before you guys and kind of put a little bit more of a human, I guess, perspective on it. Because I know it's easy to just look at the paper and the reports. But it's going to affect each and every one of us in a really big way. And so I just appreciate your consideration on this. And also looking forward, knowing that that if the MUPPET is granted and we are approved for that, knowing that even in the future we will need additional help. And so knowing that there's going to have to be some research done into looking into implementing a low-income rental housing property exemption like they've done in Eugene, and what you guys already know about. I know you guys know what I'm talking about better than I do, so I'm not even going to try and pretend like I'm an expert on those things. But what I do know is that we've been given an amazing opportunity with Cottage Village, and with your support, we can continue to grow and have an amazing impact. Because I think that we really are an example for what other places can do. And so I just appreciate your support and consideration in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one I have is Mr. Dan Bryant.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the council for this opportunity. I am Dan Bryant. I am the Executive Director of Square One Villages. I live in Eugene, Oregon at 1280 Butte Lane, and really appreciate this opportunity, not just for this evening, but this last couple of years of working with this wonderful community in Cottage Grove, and especially the Cottage Village Coalition that Bruce represents, and all of those volunteers without whom this work would not have been possible. And I have to tell you that I got a little emotional too listening to Aslan speak, because she is precisely why we are doing this work. When we began getting into the affordable housing business, our primary goal was to figure out how can we create a housing model for people whose only income is disability or Social Security, frequently just $800 a month. How can anyone possibly live on that when you need often that much just to pay your rent? And so that's what this project is all about. Now, I'll be honest with you, we were not experienced developers. We had one project under our belt, Emerald Village, when we came to Cottage Grove. And, we probably made a few mistakes as a result of that inexperience. We just blindly assumed we could do some of the things the same that we did in Eugene. Not exactly. I mean, we knew there were going to be some differences. For instance, we knew the economies of scale were going to be different, that we could only have 14 homes on an acre in this project, whereas in Eugene, we were able to do 22. So right off the bat, your land costs and development costs are going to be proportionately more expensive per home. We assumed it was going to be a little bit more difficult to raise the money to develop the project in Eugene. We managed to raise almost the entire $1.8 million for that project through private fundraising. And of course, Cottage Grove being a smaller community, we knew that we wouldn't be able to achieve that. We were hopeful we would do a little bit better in that regard than we did. In Eugene, we had $500,000 just in in-kind contributions to the project. I think in this case in Cottage Grove, it was more like $50,000. And we hoped we'd get a similar contribution from the city in the form of the system development charges, and we did. So thank you very much for that. That was hugely helpful. But probably the biggest mistake we made was that we thought we would be able to get the same kind of property tax exemption that Aslan and Bruce have mentioned, better known as LRPT, the Low Income Rental Housing Property Tax Exemption. And that has so far turned out not to be the case. And I think if you've read the letter that I sent in, you know that MUPPET, frankly, is not a good instrument for financing affordable housing. It's great for market rate housing, but for affordable housing, it's just not a great instrument. And so we hope that we will be able to work with you if you do go with Resolution 2 in the years ahead to figure out a way to develop a program more along the lines of LRPT. And if you do go with that second option and tax the pre-existing house, we'll have to make some changes, and we can do it. I mean, we can live with that. It will not be as ideal. We would much prefer, as Bruce has indicated, the first option, which would allow us then to more easily provide another unit for a low-income household, such as Aslan and the other current members of the Cottage Village. By the way, the rents in the program, I don't know if you're aware of this, are $350 to $500 carrying charges, technically paid by the co-op members. Let me talk just briefly about the benefit of affordable housing to, I think, any community, but especially in Cottage Grove. So first of all, the majority of the $1.7 million we will have spent on this project went back to the city. We used primarily local suppliers, local labor as much as possible. And so that money gets reinvested back into the city. And so when you consider the multiplier effect that every dollar spent in the community is respent 3 to 5 times, that is a significant investment in the community. Second, it is, I think, for those who I hope you will confirm if you've seen it, it's an attractive project, which we believe adds value to the neighborhood and to the entire community. A vacant lot adds little value, probably the reverse. And now we have 9 beautiful tiny homes on that lot, and soon we'll have 4 more that are nearing completion. And the people who are citizens of the community that live there now have more stable, more affordable housing, and therefore can be more productive as members of the community, as you just witnessed from Aslan. And third, some of our villagers were terribly underhoused, living in shared housing arrangements that were not healthy or without any permanent housing at all. And numerous studies have shown that people who are under or unhoused actually cost a community more than the cost of housing. Those costs can vary from increased emergency room visits due to health problems, from being without permanent housing, to the cost borne by service providers serving unhoused members of the community. So simply put, communities are healthier when their members are housed. So affordable housing, when done right, and we believe this is a case example of that, not only improves the lives of those who live in them, it adds value to a community. And so rural communities like Cottage Grove need more affordable housing to make the community more livable for all of its citizens. So I encourage you to approve the first resolution, and if not that, then at least the second, to help us create a pathway for more affordable housing projects in Cottage Grove so that every member of your community who needs and deserves a decent home in which to live will be able to find one. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. And the last person I have signed up is Christopher Jarvis.
Thank you very much, Council, Mayor Gowing, for allowing me to speak to you. And I'd like to thank Aslan for a very emotional and in truth and heartfelt expression of a desire to work within this community. Want to mention one thing, and probably just 2 things. Number 1 is opportunity. Number 2 is democracy. That can't be understated rather. The opportunity to live a dignified life, Go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Shelter is so high up on that you feel secure with a warm roof over your head. You don't have to eat out of a can. You're not living in danger. You don't have the constant need of looking over your shoulder. We're a very tight community. I truly love, this area. I've only been in this area for a year and a half, and coming from a small town as well too. I understand not the needs, but the economic impact and the truthfulness that each one of us brings to the community. It's amazing in the last 3 months, the development that we've experienced in its infancy. And it's so difficult to try to build a community from roots. I mean, we're talking the ground. You're digging in it. I'm no stranger to putting my hands in the garden. I grew up in a garden community. But, making this fruitful from administratively to just, being a happy group. I mean, it's nice getting into a community, and that democracy part comes right in. Can't be any pure democracy. What is this nation founded on? Opportunity and democracy. Opportunity. Travel. You ever seen the Mayflower? It's a really small boat. And you bob across the ocean for 3,000 miles toward an opportunity and an unknown land. This is what we've all come across. This is unknown. This is new territory for all of us. And to have the opportunity to put our lives in order and to contribute to each other's lives. And that's really what the community is all about. It's making sure that we're safe, we feel good about each other, and the growth is phenomenal. When I first came out here a couple of years ago, my brother relocated out here after he retired from the Air Force. And I was appalled by the homelessness. I was going up in Eugene, and we were walking up and down the street, and you're seeing these people. And I come from a relatively big city as well too, and the homelessness there is epidemic, as it is across the nation. And to see the opportunity again to get our lives in order, present the community with proof that this is really a successful endeavor. And I started volunteering, with the, my brother actually volunteered as well too before I did. He had a terrible accident a couple months ago. But going down and doing all the dirty work, pounding the nails. I'm not a tradesperson. I know how to throw a hammer, but I was given the jobs that allowed other people to do more productive things, and I was happy to do that. Happy to have the opportunity to create a community that will contribute to the growth of Cottage Grove, and can't say anything more than thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up for council discussion. Mr. Irvin.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's testified and shared their experience and desires. I have given this a lot of thought. And I guess I might have a couple preliminary questions. Under the section eligible property, 3.1.0.0.2.0, I'm understanding the first paragraph that lists things from A to E, 3 or more properties, 1 or more public benefit, e-housing that's compliant, all of those. I don't see a one if it meets any one of these criteria. I'm understanding this MUPPET application for this ordinance to indicate that it meets all of those criteria. And it's basically, it kind of boils down to that for me. I think this revised application is making the case, as I understand it, that because it meets item B, that it now qualifies. So I agree that this is not probably the proper tool to achieve the outcome that Square One Village is looking for. And I think it's our responsibility as a council to make sure that we are properly using the tool that we passed and have at hand. I would also say in the same breath that we need to look at other tools that can be properly wielded to yield these outcomes that would support the community. But I feel tempted to make an emotional decision that would violate the terms of this ordinance just to appease an outcome. and I don't think that's the proper way to do it. I don't think that's the responsible way to do it. So I want to hear more discussion, but I would generally support the first ordinance, and that's based on the understanding that we're dealing with 2 tax lots. I think the application showed 2 tax lots. No, I'm seeing a shaking of heads. There was 230.
Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Mongan? You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Irvin. I was looking at the code as Councilor Irvin was speaking, and let's click on the right things here. So with the 2 exhibits presented with, and I'm assuming, please correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Irvin. So for each exhibit I provided, or each resolution, the first one being everything, the entire box is shaded, and resolution, the second one has the delineation, if you will, separating out where the house is. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so this kind of is important for how the decision is made.
Right.
If it's a single tax lot, then I have to look at this entire project as one thing and not really subdivide it into 2 different taxable things.
I would, pardon me, I would interject that just to clarify, it is 1 tax lot currently at just 1.12 acres, I believe, is the entire size, but would refresh that the first MUPPET the council passed was did it, and it has been proven, as it's been adopted and accepted by the county assessment and taxation, that you can create space by way of this type of exhibit. So the Dave and Carol Rogers application, council approved the application, carving out the space that they're laying out as part of their commercial development that they plan to do soon, because that would not be subject to MUPPET because it's commercial, not residential.
Okay, so to follow up on that, is the first resolution keeping the existing taxable structure of the building as it was when they bought the property and only abating the taxes on the improvements?
Councilor Irvin, I believe that would take all of the improvement value. If council approves the first one, the one we're talking about now, it would be anything that's not the land value. So not just the things that they've done to make it better, since taking ownership, but it would be everything.
Ms. Savage?
As I understand MUPPET to read, it is to take what is currently existing and freeze the taxes at that level for 10 years. And what was existing was an empty lot with a rundown house, approximately $3,000 a year in property taxes. It is my understanding that with the last MUPPET application, what was being requested was the property taxes to be frozen at the land value and did not include the house, which is kind of what I felt hung us up the last time. And I believe that it should hang us up because this should be a conversation. When you're doing something as innovative as what you're doing, you're not going to fit into any box. What changed my mind personally is when I started reading through the summary of recommendations from a 2016 report that talked about all the things that were wrong with the house. My mind wants to give it a grade level, and we're using the term blighted. Is this property blighted? I can't define that. Is this an A quality house? Is this a B quality house? You use percentages and you take 90% or above as an A, 80% or above as a B, 80 to 90 as a B. And there's 36 things that are very seriously wrong with this house. And to me, this is not a D quality house. This is a failing house. And when you take out the windows and when you take out the siding, when you start making these repairs, I'm hearing you say that there's probably another $50,000 worth of damage that needs to be fixed. I almost want to argue and say it will likely be more. Once you start tearing things out, you find something else, you then have to fix it. And I have personal experience with this. I would really consider running this again and just agreeing to the $3,000 freezing level, because that's the way that I understand MUPPET. But in learning more about LRPD, I'd really encourage us to have conversations about that, because I think that that's probably a better fit for this need from my understanding. And I don't know if we can have those conversations now, but at the very least, I fully support the conversation of MUPPET and freezing taxes where they were at existing, and whether we consider that blighted, I don't know. That's a conversation that we need to consider. But this house sounds like it's failing. And I visited this property, and it has a very beautiful roof with really poor quality sides, windows, shingles, bricks. And you have a lot of work to do. So that's kind of my 2 cents, and where we go with that, I don't know, but I support MUPPET for this project, but I'd really encourage us to have conversations about LRPD, because I think that's more of an appropriate fit.
Thanks. Mr. Fleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I originally in the last meeting, Councilor Urban made a great point about the existing structure. There was also some question about the but for this tax, and I think Bruce and Dan really made a good point. This isn't the ideal tool for this project. That said, I do believe that this tool is meant to build housing to address our shortage. I think it's done that. I do believe that the revision for the first resolution, which includes all of the improved property, I do accept that that is a blighted property and redevelopment under the code. When we initially were discussing this, that was not the consideration that I had undertaken, and I'm really grateful that they brought this back to us with a little more clarification, because I do support the first one in granting all of the improvements, including the existing home. I'm thrilled that they're going to keep some housing in that as well. Once again, that's what we're looking for here is building more housing. And so I absolutely wholeheartedly support this. I did talk to the mayor and city manager over the last couple of weeks. I do believe we're going to have, hopefully, I mean, it'll come to the council to create a committee to look into affordable with a capital A housing, not what can people afford, but the actual, definition of affordable housing. And I'd like to have that with all the stakeholders, all sides of the fence, and have some conversations about what tools. Richard sent out a great email outlining several different programs. And so I would love to have that conversation. But at this point, I am going to support the first resolution, which includes all of the improved property.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Mr. Fleck there. I think that Resolution A is the way to go. I have watched this project from when it was just a grass lot. I believe their lead builder can handle anything that comes before him with the house and turn it into a fine part of the project, plus another apartment. These folks have raised a lot of money and have put a lot of work to get to where they are. And I think they'll carry this project across the finish line with our help. Thank you.
I'd just like to say, after last meeting, I think we got a lot more valuable information at this one, and that changed my mind, because at first I would have went with choice 2, but I'm supporting choice 1, just based on the information, so great for conversation last meeting that generated that and got the information back to us. So do we have a resolution number for this?
2039.
2039. Mr. Fleck,
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council adopt the first resolution as resolution 2039.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any more discussion on this? Mr. Irvin?
Yes, I need more clarity. When we say blighted, which we've agreed that there is no definition adopted in our ordinance, there is one in the Oregon Revised Statutes. It's quite long. Are we saying that if we have a blighted property, it has no taxable value? Or are we still saying there is some pre-existing taxable value on that structure, and in resolution 1 that remains? Or that's what I'm confused on right now. If what value, other than saying that it provides a public benefit, taking care of a blighted property, what effect is that having?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Irvin, to attempt to answer that, because it can be fairly tenuous. As the definition that I used from Google in the memorandum, it's to bring down. And so if you're reversing that blight, if the new roof, new windows, siding, things like that, it's to bring up. And so that's a public benefit of, if you're the neighbor across the street who's looking to sell, or maybe someone looking to buy, that view shed of being able to see a home that's well taken care of is the public benefit, is to bring it out of that. Obviously, there's TV shows aplenty nowadays where folks are in the business of doing this, bringing these homes up. But in this case, this is just an opportunity, and as is maybe vaguely listed in the code, a way to incorporate that in order to bring more housing as just another benefit of the program.
Okay, but we could also say there's a public benefit of public space in that same building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm still confused at why we're honing in on blighted and what effect it's actually having, and how that somehow changes the reading of this ordinance.
So I think that what we didn't know before and what we do know now is the intent of the applicant to spend money, potentially as much as $80,000 and maybe more or maybe less. So instead of it just being a component of as pre-existing, it's part of the development in that it's getting a new look and a new use. The previous application just had the uses of a garage building, an outbuilding, if you will, being converted for the community space. This now is going to move that community space into there, creating more storage for on-site in that old shop building.
Okay. Maybe I can restate my misunderstanding. If a tax assessor has gone by at some point and assessed a tax value on that property before it was purchased, is that an accurate understanding?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there was an existing tax value assigned, and that was the only structure, to my understanding, on the lot. So it has it's been recorded probably in Eugene, right?
Yeah.
And so are we saying in this proposal that we just have a motion and a second on, that we're going to not recognize, we're going to abate, we're going to not collect the tax on that value that was assessed based on our determination? And I'm wondering, wouldn't the more appropriate way to do that is to say, tax assessor, reassess the value of that property as a blighted property that has no value? Because are we kind of stepping in the tax assessor's place here? Because this MUPPET, as I understood it, was only to be looking at the improved values, and that there is this important aspect of actually recognizing the pre-existing values. And it seems like we're just taking the whole equation and erasing it.
So I can't speak to the specifics of whether it's an OAR or an ORS for how, if you've received your tax bill, it'll say improvements, it'll say land value, it'll say market value, and then there's the assessed value. And that's the principal that, is charged, that $18.50 per thousand, and that gets you to the tax bill. So their buildings and their support infrastructure are already itemized out on individual tax statements. And then there's the land that exists as well. And so to try and help get there for you, it's to say that yes, they're going to take that improvement line item with the addition of the 14 or the 13 cottages and the final improvements to the house, the conversion into the community space and an apartment space. That improvement line would then become subject to that abatement. The remaining portion would be the land value tax for the 10 years. That does increase at 3% typical for property taxes.
So Lane County is still going to collect their taxes on that structure as a they're going to only assess on land.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Fleck?
So Councilor Urban, I guess for me, originally, if the House had no changes, this MUPPET program is to spur development. And for me, originally, some of the concern is that I didn't believe that I didn't know or wasn't aware of the extent of the improvements that were on that building. Because I kind of believe that this is supposed to, be a tool to build new stuff. And if something's existing, should we be exempting its taxes? And so with the development that's gone on, with the added bonus of now they're also going to have, rental space in it, that's where I changed my position. I don't know if that helps you as far as where I'm coming from. Blighted certainly could be any number of things. I know we did urban renewal district for years and years out there, in that Rail River Road area. And, vacant land, is that blighted or not? I guess the question is the improvements that we wanted were, we put in some intersections and we did some things to help develop that area. So I guess for me, blighted is one of those kind of nebulous terms that could mean any number of things. In this situation, I believe that I'm okay using this definition. I don't know if that helps you or not.
Thank you, Mr. Fleck. I honestly am just trying to make sure I understand what I'm voting on so that I can explain it later. So, I mean, I'm not going to put up a fight here. I just hope that we're not starting some trend that gets out of hand with other applications that are going to, maybe don't have the affordable aspect to it, but say, look, you made this exception here, defined it this way, and that's my primary. That's strange. So with that, I'll go ahead.
If there's no more discussion, I'm going to have the recorder call the roll. Oh, sorry, Councilor Stennett.
Yeah. First, quickly, I'd like to thank everyone that's spoken spoken out on behalf of the project, especially from a personal standpoint. I can admit to being conflicted pretty much in the same way that Councilor Irvin is. I support this project and what it's trying to do for this community. I think we need housing at all levels in Cottage Grove. I'm trying to keep it simple myself, to keep it something that I can understand and explain and support. I think if a developer had come to us and said, we have a single tax lot with a house on it, the house needs some work, but we're planning to do it. We're going to put these tiny homes on the lot, and we would like the MUPPET tax exemption because it fits the criteria. I'm not ready to say whether or not the property is blighted, but I think if that application had come to us that way originally, I don't see why I wouldn't be supporting it. I think that's why I can support it now. And that's kind of how I'm gonna approach this.
Thank you. Ms. Soulsby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councilors, for all your opinions and suggestions on this issue. I myself support what everyone is saying, although I do have concerns of setting a precedence. I am very concerned of how we distinguish between what's existing and what's improvement, and how we tie that together and move forward with this, and what could come to us later and have a developer say, well, you approved this and why not me? And so that is my issue with this. And emotionally, I understand why we would want to support this as a city, but I am definitely having questions like Councilor Irvin. And so it's kind of a little sticky situation here. And so I'm a little up in the air here. While I do support the affordable housing, this I do have questions about.
All right. So with that, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Counselor Stinnett?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Youth Representative?
Thumbs up.
I'm sorry.
Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Thank you. It's good discussion. Okay, for the item C, before I read that one, Ms. Savage wants to say something.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to recuse myself because this is an actual conflict of interest. I'm going to step outside, and please come get me when it's done. Thank you so much.
Chief, please not help me remember. So item C is an application for multi-unit property tax exemption MUPPET program for High Valley Development Corporation. Mr. Mongan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Before the City Council is an application for the MUPPET program submitted by the property owner High Valley Development Corporation. The 80-unit project was considered and approved by the Planning Commission via Site Design Review application SDR 2-21. The approved SDR includes the development of 11 buildings, with 10 of them being multi-unit 2-story residence structures, and the 11th being the clubhouse community building with pool. This application meets MUPPET eligibility criteria, specifically location of the development site is on or within a quarter mile of a lane transit district route, and 3 or more buildings are proposed within the development. As part of the MUPPET application, the City Council should review the public benefit components required in order to qualify for the exemption provided in Chapter 3.10. The applicant must propose and agree to provide one or more design elements benefiting the general public, but not necessarily the public at large, as stated in subsection 3.10.050B. The applicant has proposed the following public benefits: open space over required minimum, which is 10%. They're proposing 27%. ADA facilities or units, pedestrian-oriented design features, common meeting rooms and or the clubhouse, and construction of a public bus shelter at the existing bus stop location of Route 98 in support of the use of mass transit. The attached resolution has been prepared for council adoption if the City Council wishes to approve the MUPPET application. The recommendation is that the City Council consider whether to approve the attached application for multiple unit property tax exemption program submitted by High Valley Development Corporation. Pursuant to Chapter 3.10 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code, the application meets the criteria as outlined in sections 3.10.020 and 3.10050, showing location on or within a quarter mile of an LTD bus route, 3 or more units, and public benefits of additional space, ADA facilities, common meeting room or clubhouse, and the public bus shelter. If the City Council desires to approve the MUPPET application, again, the resolution has been prepared and is attached for possible adoption. Costs associated with the approval of this application will be realized as revenues not received from the improvement value associated with the newly constructed 80-unit multifamily development with pool clubhouse. Estimates performed by staff with support of Lane County Assessment and Taxation based on income versus expenses to assessed value calculation show that if approved by the city, if approved, the city will be delaying approximately $62,500 to $81,550 per year over the 10-year period of the program. At completion of the 10-year period, the city will receive approximately $84,000 annually on the improvement area considered in the attached application. However, as stated in the last application with Square One, there are multiple mechanisms the county can use to establish the assessed value for a development. For example, the estimates provided above are based on an income analysis, but there are alternate methods of using cost of construction or sales applying to commercial development. Let's see. It is important also to note that the numbers provided are estimates of the potential value of city taxes only and do not reflect the value of taxes delayed by other taxing districts, those being South Lane School District, South Lane Fire and Rescue, and Lane County. Again, please understand that the numbers presented here are approximate estimates based on declared values from the applicant. And to quote Joe Leake again, these are just estimates, and until it's on the tax rolls, we don't really know. Without this MUPPET program, these 80 units would likely not be constructed, resulting in the loss or potential loss of 80 new dwelling units in the community and the loss of $13.8 million of construction jobs and services and materials. The applicant has paid their $840 application fee for your consideration at this time, if you have any questions.
Is this 2040? Mr. Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, I move that resolution 2040 be adopted. And I will just say that I'm excited to see the number of units we're getting. Our housing needs analysis showed that we need to get 69 units a year for the next, I believe it was 20 years, to catch up and keep up. This is 120 plus units in a year. I'm really excited. Housing right now is just desperately short, and I'm really excited to see this going forward. Thanks.
Second.
A motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts?
Nay.
Counselor Sennett?
Aye.
Counselor Savage? I'm sorry. Counselor Solzy?
Yay.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Youth Representative?
Thumbs up.
Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Thank you. Give Chief a couple of seconds here to get Counselor Savage back inside. Okay, we have item D, resolution establishing appropriations within the general fund for the expenditure of unforeseen specific purpose grants for Travel Oregon. Ms. Likens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city has been awarded a grant in the amount of $30,000 from Travel Oregon through the Destination Ready program. The grant is to be used specifically for the creation of 3 outdoor public parklets within the public right-of-way of Main Street in the downtown Cottage Grove Historic District. The project implements Cottage Grove City Council's parklet pilot program. Travel Oregon established the development, enhancement, and stewardship of visitor experiences that are COVID-19 appropriate to aid in economic recovery and enhance local livability during the summer of 2021. The city's parklet program dovetailed well into this opportunity. In order to lawfully spend the money, the city must comply with the requirements of local budget law. Expenditures in the year of a receipt of a grant or bequest or gift or devices transferred to the local government in the trust for a specific purpose may be made after enactment of a resolution or ordinance authorizing the expenditure. It's staff's recommendation that the City Council adopt the resolution to establish appropriations for the use of the grant funds for the purpose stated in the amount of $30,000.
Mr. Fleck,
Mr. Mayor, move that the council adopt resolution 2041.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Counselor Stinnett?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Youth Representative? Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Okay, item C, Police Department Policy Resolution. Chief Shepherd.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The City of Cottage Grove has a policy procedure manual in section 10.4 that addresses the employment of spouses and relatives as related to job classifications where one employee may be responsible for supervising or having authority to appoint, remove, or discipline a spouse or relative, auditing the work of the other, and would have influence over the promotion or transfer of a spouse or relative. In ORS 244.179, subsection 1, it prohibits a public official from directly supervising a person who is a relative or household member. But in ORS 244.179, section 4, it provides an exception for that prohibition. The Cottage Grove Police Department developed a policy specifying when a sergeant, who is our line supervisor, can act in an official capacity and may direct or supervise a person who is a relative or household member per the ORS 244.179, subsection 4. The police department rank and command structure provides that only one supervisor has the responsibility to appoint, remove, discipline, promote, or transfer police department employees, and that's me, the chief of police. The policy describes the role of the sergeant and limits the sergeant's role and functions as supervisor. The attached policy is specific to the police department and does not pertain to any other department within the city. The city attorney has reviewed and approved this policy for content and adherence to ORS 244.179. It's the recommendation of staff that this personnel policy change be approved by council.
Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Are there any other police departments in Oregon in this area you know of that have adopted such a policy?
I don't know specifically of policies, but I do know that there are relatives or household members that are supervised by certain groups of supervisory entities within those departments. Because ORS 179 or 244.179 offers an exception that a city can create a policy that is specific to that city and specific to the supervision of certain employees. And because our rank and structure limits the ability to hire, fire, promote to me, being the chief of police, we do not believe it's a conflict. There are two brothers that currently work in our department. And there are times when they work together, and the way our policy and procedure manual stands, the one with the most seniority at our department is the one that would be the lead in that circumstance. Our sergeants are responsible for being line supervisors from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. 7 days a week. We have two of them that work at night, so they're responsible for leading the shift, making decisions based on policy and procedure, and offering support. And they do refer and correct reports, but it has nothing to do with the hiring, firing, promotion of those employees they work with. And we don't believe that it's a conflict as far as if one of those brothers, both being eligible under our current criteria to be promoted, were to be promoted and supervise the other.
Mr. Fleck.
So I thought about this a bit over the weekend, Friday at our agenda session. It was kind of an interesting thought. I thought about gosh, if my wife and I were working together and one of us was supervising the other, how would that go? You know, and
Not good for you, sir.
I am less comfortable with that scenario than a couple brothers. And I guess the reason I'm going to go ahead and support this, Scott, is just because I know that under your leadership that this isn't going to be a problem. I will be honest, it does make me a little concerned. But once again, I do trust you and Richard, and so I do support this. But I hope that if there are any issues, that you know is something that we could review in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So this resolution 2042,
Yes.
Oh,
Mr. Fleck,
I'll go ahead and move that resolution 2042 be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any more discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Counselor Bennett?
All right.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Irvin?
Aye.
Youth Representative? Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, item F is adoption of the FCS Group 5-year utility rate financial plan. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on February 22nd, 2021, the FCS Group presented the 5-year utility financial plan for water, storm, drainage, and wastewater funds to the City Council. FCS performed detailed analysis of each fund that detailed annual inflation costs, operational forecasts, annual growth rates, and the city's adopted financial policies. The results of the analysis showed no rate increases are necessary for the water and the storm drainage funds for the next 5 years, starting in 2021-22. The original proposed utility financial plan recommended 3 consecutive years of 12% increases in the wastewater fund to meet the operational costs and the capital improvements scheduled for the next 5 years. Council was very concerned with the proposed increases and asked staff to bring back additional rate proposals for Council to consider. On March 17th, the staff was alerted that the 1970s era clarifier at the wastewater treatment plant stopped operating properly, causing solids to build up and not transfer to the digester for further processing. Currently, the plant is able to operate with the 2009 clarifier to meet DEQ permit requirements. The older failing clarifier must be repaired and operational by fall to meet processing requirements during high influent flows. The current capital improvement plan, CIP, has the 1970s clarifier planned for rebuilding or replacement in 2023-24. Staff has worked with the FCS Group to adjust the CIP plan reflecting the need to replace the 70s clarifier in late 2021-22 and early 22-23 fiscal years, and moved other CIP projects out to reduce the proposed rate increases over the next 5 years. The adjusted CIP project list is as follows. In 2020-21-22, complete the effluent irrigation project at the 174 interchange. Rebuild the 1970s clarifier over the 21-22 and 22-23 years. Design a new biosolids drying system in 22-23. Build a biosolids drying system over the years 23-24 and 24-25. And seal sewer manholes 30,000 per year over the next 5 years, and continue to repair and replace sewer main lines throughout the city as needed and resources are available. To meet operational funding and vital repairs to both the treatment plant and collection system to maintain compliance with the current DEQ discharge permit, FCS is proposing an 8% rate increase for 2021-22, and an additional 8% increase for 22-23, and 5% increase for 23-24, and no increases for 24-25 or 25-26. These are the minimum rate increases at this time necessary to keep the treatment plant and collection system operational and complying with DEQ requirements. The attached resolution adopts the 5-year financial plan with the new proposed rates for wastewater. The city manager and the public works director attended a town hall meeting through the League of Oregon Cities with Congressman Peter DeFazio regarding proposed federal funding bills for water and wastewater improvements. If the bill is approved, $40 million in low interest loans and $10 million in grants will be available for wastewater treatment plant improvements for jurisdictions that qualify throughout the United States. City staff will follow and apply for funding to help reduce the overall cost increases to the utility users in the city. We have with us this evening John Garducci, sorry, from the FCS group, and he's will present the changes to the proposed rates and plan for you this evening.
Thank you, Faye, and thank you, Mayor and Council. So what you'll see is a very similar presentation that we looked at in February, but the focus is on that new scenario for wastewater. And let's see, there we go. And then a quick refresh on the recommendations for water and stormwater. These are the same key assumptions that you saw built into the numbers that we looked at in February. We apply inflators to all the expenses, both capital and operating. We assume a growth rate in the customer base, operating budget, and then the changes to the capital plan that Faye talked about. We have the same target balances for reserves and fiscal policies as you looked at in February. So this is really graphically shows what the changes do. We've from our perspective, we took the capital plan and essentially moved it out 1 year. So beginning in fiscal year 21-22, those projects all moved out 1 year, except for the two that Faye talked about. One being the irrigation, the interchange irrigation project, and the second being the clarifier rebuild. Both of those at least begin in fiscal year 21-22. That allows us to mitigate the steepness of the increases needed and kind of get over the capital hump without as large increases as you saw in February. We do have to issue a little bit more debt, but the rates are sufficient to fund that debt. So this is again a graphic depiction of that revenue requirement forecast. Faye mentioned 8%, 8%, and 5% being the three increases proposed or required, and then the city's able to go again, absent additional capital projects that we might not know about yet. The city's able to go with no increases for a series of years. And the fund balances are healthy again by 2030. So this is what the actual rates would look like with those percentages applied to the existing rate structure. You see the inside city base charges. They're going from $9.07 for most customers to $9.80. And then volume charges similarly going up from $4.66 to $5.03. And then similar increases in subsequent years. The system improvement fee, which is recovered entirely in fixed charges, you see again would go up by those same percentage increases. So this is about, if we look at that initial year of proposed rate increase for the average user, their bill would go from $53.69 to $57.99. That's a savings of a little more than $2 over the rates that you saw in February with the 12% increase. And just for context, as Faye mentioned, no increases needed for water and stormwater, again, given the information that we have now, and those short-term capital needs for those two services. And then you see how the sewer service, those increases would be applied as proposed if the city decides to go with this modified capital scenario. And again, the water and stormwater outlook is driven by capital projects. There's just a more, I guess, modest capital plan or capital needs for both services. So rate increases are not necessary in either case. Front-loaded capital plans. And that's everything for tonight.
Thank you.
Everything in prepared material anyway.
Can we go back to big screen?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There we go. Thank you. I look at little tiny people when it's that way, and it's not easy to see who's raising their hand. Mr. Fleck.
Sorry about that.
So, John, we were discussing Friday at our agenda session. It's interesting. I'm sure I probably cringed when I looked at the rates. I wasn't necessarily saying change them, however. And I guess maybe you can elaborate, because down the road, you're talking about a $2 savings over, 3 or 5 years to the ratepayer, but the projects we're putting off are going to get more expensive down the road. And so that $2 that we pay now is going to turn into 5 or 6 by the projects that we're putting off. And fiscally, this just doesn't make sense. I mean, yes, our rates are high. I certainly, cringe when I pay my bill and when I help others pay it, and especially our business one. But at the same time, just from a fiscal sense, if we've got these projects that need to happen, I guess maybe you can help me understand what those increased costs are going to be down the road that we're putting off.
Well, I don't think I could give you numbers tonight. We can get back to you on that, but you're describing exactly what the trade-off is. By spreading those impacts over and pushing out those capital projects, there will likely be a greater expense to the city in the long run than there will be in the short run. But we're talking about incurring a little bit more debt in order to get the rates down to that 8%, the series of 8% increases that we just looked at too. So there will be interest costs associated with that debt. Can I provide the actual cost numbers as a follow-up?
Please.
That's about as close as, okay. But that is you've described the trade-off very well.
So I guess just to kind of finish that thought, I guess I'll put it to the council whether we should adopt this and just go forward with what's proposed, or if we should go back to that original plan, get a new resolution and just do the projects. Because, Richard made an apt comment Friday morning about kicking the can down the road. Part of where we are is because we kept our rates low for years and did not do the projects that needed to be done, which is why we have the backlog of repairs to our system that we need. And I got to tell you, I'll support this if that's where the majority's at, but I would much rather just bite the bullet and get the projects done that we have planned.
And for Councilor Savage has her hand up, but I agree with that too. I don't want to be, I don't plan on being on council in 5 years, and I don't want who's on council in 5 years to say, Why did they pass this on to us? And, because I sit here and think of that now when I look back at things that didn't get done. So I am not in favor of putting things off, because any kind of project cost is going to go up. That's just a given. And so what we put off for 5 years or 10 years is going to be worse to deal with then than it is now. Ms. Savage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like to think outside of the box, and while I fully feel comfortable paying the higher increases myself personally, I have a very dear friend who this would really, really impact. And I wonder if we can offer some sort of incentive. What I'm seeing in these new modified percentages is an increase of 21% over the next couple of years versus 5 years. What if when you get a job and you fill out your paperwork and you say, I claim 0, they take all the taxes, and then you end up getting a kickback at the end. What if we gave folks the option? I don't even know if this is possible, but what if we said, what can you pay? You're either going to pay more now and then less later on. Well, not less later on, but you pay more now and then you don't have increases later on because you've already started your increases. Or you can start with a lower percentage increase and just do small increases. And I don't know if different people can get different increases, but maybe there's an income bracket where they can qualify for lower rate increases, and folks who are at a higher income bracket can kind of hold us through to the end. I don't know. I'm trying to think outside of the box, and I think of folks who really can't afford it. And I don't mind helping. I don't mind doing that. That's just me personally, trying to think outside the box.
Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support the first proposal that we had. I think it is just a matter of taking responsibility for what it actually costs, lowers your overall cost down the line. It hurts. Things go up all the time. Cost of living goes up. And at the risk of sounding cold, which I have no intent of, but, at some point, some people are not going to be able to afford certain things, and hard choices have to be made. And we all face those things for whatever circumstances, but I don't think it justifies being irresponsible right now for the future and passing off our burden to future generations. So I want to say thank you to staff for looking at ways of being innovative with the projects, with looking at ways to get returns on those projects, whether it be the selling the cakes in the future or whatever the case may be, but holding to that high integrity mark of doing what we're supposed to do now, and then a little extra if we can, is what I want to be part of.
Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, we have $4.30 average increase for a user with 8%. What would it be at 12? Do you have those numbers there?
It's $6.44, I believe, or something like that. Let me find it real quick here.
So like
$6.44. Yep, I have the right number.
Thank you, Richard. Yep. So like Councilor Fleck's saying, that $2 now could save a lot down the road. Isn't that what you're saying, Mike? Yeah. Yeah, I was completely against this in the beginning, but after listening to Richard on the beeper and reading a lot of this and seeing what it is that we need, and also the fact that we're adding all this new housing, which is going to be more weight on the camel's back, I'm beginning to think that maybe we should go back to the 12%. I hate to say that, but that's what I said. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So this be resolution 2043. Mr. Stennett.
Yeah, I was just hoping to kind of summarize or get some clarification if I could. So the original proposal was 12% a year for 5 years. That's correct?
3.
Just for 3 years.
Just 3. Okay. We've taken on additional debt, or proposed to take on additional debt to lower those percentages to 8, and 5. Is that also correct?
Correct, and to push some projects out.
Okay. Which projects?
There's stretching projects out over a period of time, and then most of the projects are sewer main repairs and infrastructure repairs to the collection system.
Okay. So those would not, taking on the debt wouldn't necessarily entail a mandatory increase after those 3 years. We're just saying that we're recognizing the pitfalls possible in delaying the projects. Is that also fair to say?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
But I think it's also important to note that the debt you're taking on is $2.2 million as compared in the first scenario, it's 1.7. So you're already seeing a $300,000 increase in cost because you've put it off.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Soulsby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You made the comment about kicking the can down the road and feeling like I personally, only 2 years on council, feel like that right now. And I would hate, like you said, Mr. Mayor, to up the ante even more and pass that on to future councilors. And so I would definitely be in favor of, as hard as it is, I hate our water bills. I would love to do something in the future to lower them. I think we all would. But I think it is the prudent thing to do, is to go ahead and bite the bullet here.
Mr. Stennett.
I'd like to again hope out loud that we could provide some outreach and a bit of explanation to the community regarding our water systems, the costs to provide the service, and the need for increases, recognizing that it is a hardship for a lot of people, and that you don't really get those explanations from a lot of the other businesses and entities that raise the costs of the things that you buy and that make your life possible the way it's lived. But I think as a local entity, we can and should do that for our community when we can, and the people that we live alongside. So I would hope that could happen somehow in the future. Thank you.
And I'd just like to say on that Mr. Myers did put out on the Beeper show today that he was willing to take groups and entities out to the wastewater and water treatment plant and show them what it is out there and do that exact same thing there is given an outreach. So Ms. Soulsby, you had a comment?
Just one more, Mr. Mayor, thank you. If we can clarify that we're talking about $2 difference there in the raises and how much of a difference that'll make in the city payout overall, that would, I think, be very helpful to our citizens.
Mr. Myers.
So it sounds like you may want to amend the resolution that is attached. And so to do that, what you would need to do is to change the references in the last whereas and in the now therefore from April 12th to February 22nd to reflect that initial original presentation from FCS, if that's the way you decide to go.
Mr. Fleck.
I'll just say so moved because that sounds easier.
Second. We have a second.
Yeah, second.
Okay. I'm deaf kind of, so please speak up. So we have a motion with a second with an amend there. Is there more discussion? With not, Mr. Myers?
So I want to make sure that the motion is really clear. You're moving to adopt Resolution 2043 with the amendments to the last whereas and the now therefore, referring to the report on February 22nd.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, that was my motion.
Okay. So no more discussion. We will call the roll.
Counselor Roberts?
Aye.
Counselor Stinnett?
Aye.
Counselor Savage?
Aye.
Counselor Soulsby?
Aye.
Counselor Fleck?
Aye.
Counselor Urban?
Aye.
Youth Representative? Mayor Gowing?
Aye. Thank you. It took a long time to get through the resolutions, but I appreciate everybody's input and discussion on that, because I think we did our due diligence on looking into everything. So again, thank you. Okay, business from the City Council. Item A is an update on Cottage Grove Area Transit Development Plan Project. Ms. Ferguson.
Good
Already ahead of us.
evening, Mayor, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for, I know this meeting is getting long, but I'm hoping that you'll enjoy the session that's coming. I am actually here to introduce Kelly Clark to you. She is our consultant working with the Lane Council of Governments on a statewide Transportation Improvement Fund grant that we received last year to do a transit development plan for the Cottage Grove area. So I'm going to let Kelly actually give her presentation to you rather than talking any longer to make this evening a little shorter. So Kelly?
Thank you, Amanda. And I'm also here with Rachel Dorfman and Sid Schoaf, who are also with the Lane Council of Governments. We have been working, I'm going to kind of go through these quickly since we might be short on time, but we have been working with a project management team to develop the Cottage Grove area's first transit development plan. And that team has included Amanda Ruth Linos with South Lane Wheels, as well as our Oregon Department of Transportation representatives. And we've also had the opportunity to work with an advisory committee who has provided us insights and guidance throughout this project. And it's intended to, the advisory committee is intended to be representatives from various groups around the Cottage Grove area, Councilor Irvin with your council, Ashley Reigel with the Cottage Grove Planning Commission, Emma McDonald with the Cottage Grove Youth Advisory Committee, as well as representatives from the City of Cresswell, the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce, Lane County, Lane Transit District, North Douglas Betterment, South Lane Mental Health, South Lane School District, South Lane Wheels Board, and the Umpqua Transit District. And the purpose of this plan has been to develop a master plan that supports and guides decisions about service improvements, investments. It evaluates the impacts of community growth, strengthens coordination with the public and community partners, and strategizes future funding opportunities around transit. The project's goals are to define the role of public transportation in the community, identify the Cottage Grove area transportation needs, and guide public transportation growth. And you'll see in here, I kind of use public transportation and transit interchangeably, and apologize if that's confusing. I'll try to stick with one. As Amanda mentioned, our funding is a statewide transportation improvement fund. The travel shed represents where area residents need to and want to travel on a daily basis to access social services, personal needs, education, recreation, and community connections. It extends to northern Douglas County, the Eugene-Springfield area, east to Dorena, and west to Lorain. And the project, we kicked this project off in March of 2020, so right as COVID conditions were coming upon us. But through that, we evaluated existing and future conditions and developed some community profiles for our whole travel shed area. We conducted a lot of community engagement to the extent possible, and I'll share that on the next slide, but that really went into our vision, goals, objectives, and performance measures that we've established. We're kind of in a needs assessment and implementation strategies phase now. And then we're drafting up the TDP, and we'll return to council in June for your further guidance and request for approval. This project framework has guided us through establishing the vision, values, goals, and objectives. And right now we're in that blue band of this triangle, evaluating the needs that we've heard from the community and developing strategies to meet those needs. Once the plan is in action, we'll be able to pursue the strategies that we've identified and evaluate performance. Public participation has been really integral to our efforts throughout the whole project. As I mentioned, we have a stakeholder advisory committee. We have a project website that we've updated throughout and provided materials and resources on that webpage. We've presented to local communities and groups. We've informed about the project through a water bill flyer, had a discussion on the beeper show, and conducted a community survey where we received 169 responses and had that survey out in the community both online and in paper form. And again, through all of the community feedback, through our work with the advisory committee and with the project management team, we've developed a vision statement that states the Cottage Grove area has a regional transit system offering equitable, safe, resilient, and reliable local and regional connections. And we have 8 themes for goals, and they're safety, convenience, reliability, accessibility, environmental sustainability, equity, financial stability, and system resilience. And one of the memos in your council packet contains the full, all of the text around these goals and objectives. But we wanted to provide you just the themes here. And now I'm going to transition into summarizing the assessment of transit needs that we've heard. And we've heard of transit needs around both needs, gaps, and issues as articulated from 3 primary sources. The majority through just the community and stakeholders. What have we heard from you all as we've had conversations in the community and gotten your feedback? And then through the development of the goals and objectives, primarily through conversations through one of our advisory committee meetings, where all the comments that we had around goals and objectives really translated to gaps and needs, and we wanted to capture those. And then analysis of the Cottage Grove area's existing and future transportation, population, and land use conditions. So to summarize those needs, what we've heard are that ADA compliant vehicles and infrastructure for our growing and aging population are needed. We need to increase frequency of transit service so that it can be more reliably used for commuting, shopping, personal needs, medical appointments, and education. Increase the collaboration with regional partners to provide regional coverage. Need to expand weekday and weekend service hours in the morning and evening. A need to expand marketing and outreach efforts to raise public awareness about the services. That physical, financial, and technological barriers to transit needs to be lowered, particularly for transit-dependent populations. That public transportation needs to contribute more to enhanced community and economic development, and that resiliency needs to be integrated into the system to absorb and respond to economic fluctuations, natural disasters, climate change, and hazardous incidents. And then the last 3 are to the needs around walking and biking, since they're integral to a transit network, the City of Cottage Grove's bicycle and master plan, and that is to be developed through a transportation growth management grant that I think Amanda has written and been awarded. Should cross-reference the TDP to better leverage funding opportunities to implement the strategies serving all active transportation modes, an increase in staff and vehicle fleet to meet the community's transit needs, and to establish and track local performance measures with targets to help monitor progress over time and prioritize investments. And these needs are detailed in the memo in your council packet as well. And with the kind of identification of those needs, we've drafted up implementation strategies to address them. And the proposed strategies in your council packet are categorized into 4 categories. So foundational strategies, service strategies, capital strategies, and management strategies. And we've kind of assigned them or characterized them within the timeframes of short term, which are less than 5 years upon plan approval, medium term, which is addressing those strategies within 5 to 10 years, and then longer term, so projects that are more out, but 10 years and beyond. And just by way of providing some examples of the draft strategies that we've identified in your memo, in your packet, the first is to form a TDP implementation team that will help carry out strategies and perform periodic assessments of the TDP, to conduct a feasibility study for the development of a transit hub at the Road River Trailhead Park, pursue new funding sources for the Cottage Grove area transit system and consider service options that generate additional revenue, coordinate with the Lane Transit District to ensure continuity of the mobility on-demand services after the pilot ends, explore feasibility for expansion beyond the LTD service boundary. That mobility on-demand service is contained to the city limits, and there's, we've identified some needs beyond those, and so how do we address that? Expand service hours to include evening and weekends in order to better serve local businesses, regional destinations, and community events. Enhance marketing, education, and promotion efforts through print, online, and mobile platforms, including Facebook ads, Google ads, and I'm sure there's lots of others out there. And then coordinate with human service agencies, serving adults, seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans to provide transit services meeting the needs of these members of our community. And we met with the advisory committee last week and had a really positive conversation around these needs identified and the draft implementation strategies. And the most resounding kind of comments that we heard were about confirming support of what's been identified here, and then interest in partnering where possible to support our community members and the visitors, so both our members and visitors, through public transportation. And we heard that loudly from Lane Transit District, Lane County, and the City of Crestwell. So today we welcome your feedback, and my contact information is in the staff report. So if you'd like to comment after this meeting. So next steps, we will be working on, we intend to have the TDP draft, so all of the chapters together, available for review on Monday, April 22nd, and to be open for a 2-week period through Monday, May 10th. And then we intend on returning to City Council on June 24th for draft review and acceptance. And at this point, we welcome any questions or comments.
Can we go back to big screen?
Oh, thank you.
Big screen. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Fleck.
I guess just, maybe a little bit of background about how this fits in with the, the transportation plan and the comp plan. So is this like the zoning, for, implementing the goals in the comp plan? I mean, is that sort of relationship that this is kind of what we want to do with our transportation system plan? Is that how these correlate?
So Mike, Ruth and I actually applied for this grant originally because we were directed by ODOT, by Mark Bernard from ODOT, that we needed to have a transit development plan for our system in order to continue to apply for state transportation improvement funds and state transit funds. So in order to access those funding sources, which are the financial pool that we fund most of Southland Wheels' programs through, including, and a lot of that Lane County or LTD uses to fund mobility on demand through, we needed to have a local plan. That so this plan process actually follows the ODOT's requirements for that. That's why it's a 5-year plan and doesn't really follow our normal transportation system plan, which is a 20-year plan. So this isn't going to be adopted as a subset of our transportation system plan. It is a separate document that is used as a source of potential projects for capital improvement programs and for other grants in the future, but is actually a separate document. that's one of the reasons I, Kelly mentioned that we would want to incorporate some of these comments as they're applicable into the upcoming bicycle and pedestrian master plan that we will start working on this summer, because that will be a subset of our transportation system plan. So anything that is appropriate to kind of that overlaps with those two plans, we would want to incorporate into the bicycle and pedestrian master plan.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. Okay, Vision Keeper appointments. Teresa's not here, so Mr. Myers.
Yes, we need to make some changes to our Vision Keeper appointment, at least one change. We appointed, at the previous council meeting, we appointed Sean and I, the Chamber Executive Officer, to a term that would expire in December of 22. And the way the terms are actually set up, it would be December 31st, 21. So we need to make that change. We also received a nomination for a lead partner from Peace Health, from Cottage Grove Community Medical Center, for Anna Marie Dudley. She currently serves on the Vision Keepers as their lead partner representative, and they want to continue that. And so we need to make the change for Sean and I from the Chamber of Commerce to December 31st of 2021, and to appoint Anna Marie Dudley to the lead partner position for Peace Health, expiring in December of 22.
Mr. Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recommend that City Council approve the term for Sean and I from December 31st, 2021 to expire December 31st, 2021, and to appoint Councilor Savage.
That's next one.
Nope. Anna Marie Dudley.
Anna Marie Dudley.
Okay.
You skipped ahead to the next agenda item.
My second.
Well, I botched that one. It is on the same page right here.
Yeah.
So do I need a second on that first part? Recommend is recommended. I'd make a motion. The City Council approve the term correction for Sean and I, the Chamber of Commerce, to a term to expire December 31st, 2021. To appoint Councilor Savage and approve appoint.
No. Anna Marie Dudley.
All right, maybe I've got one. I can read, but.
Or we got two different.
Oh, okay, yeah, and you do want to appoint Councilor Savage. That's correct. Okay. You're right. Never mind. Forget me. Sorry.
Second.
I wasn't quite done reading it.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I continue?
Yes.
And approve appointment of the following, to appoint Councilor Savage and approve appointment for the following for lead partner position for the term expiring December 31st, 2022, the lead partner's position to be going to Anna Marie Dudley.
We have a motion with a second. Okay. Is there any more discussion? It is a late night. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, item C is the City Council Subcommittee Liaison Appointments. Mr. Myers.
So there needs to be a change in the recommendation on this one, because, and this is where I got confused, is this one recommends that since Ward 1 position wasn't filled yet, the mayor wanted to hold off on appointing the Vision Keeper appointment, which has just been done, and also the alternate for the Chamber of Commerce, and name Councilor Savage for both of those positions. So you have appointed from the previous action Councilor Savage to the Vision Keepers. Now you just need to approve the mayor's appointment of Councilor Savage as the alternate for the Chamber of Commerce.
That's where I got confused as well.
There we go.
I'll take this one. I'll do this one's going.
Mr. Fleck.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve the appointment of Chalice Savage to the Vision Keepers Committee and the alternate for the Chamber of Commerce.
I have a motion with a second. Is there any more discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item D is Budget Committee recruitment. Ms. Likens.
Thanks, Mayor Council. As of March 8th, 2021, there is one unexpired term vacated by the appointment of Jarvis to the City Council. Her unexpired term expires 12/31 of 23. The deadline for submitting an application is 5 o'clock this Friday, April 16th. Staff recommendation that the City Council appoint a 3-member committee, a subcommittee, to review and consider all the applications received and then interview the applicants.
Does anybody want to be on? Mr. Fleck?
So, Mr. Mayor, I was exceeding my authority Friday morning when I was about to appoint folks and then realized we were in a work session. But with that, I believe that Councilors Urban, Savage, and myself were willing to serve. And I was going to appoint Councilor Urban as the chair, but I lean to your wisdom on that matter.
All right, so that works for me if Mr. Urban wants to chair that and everybody's okay with that. There you go. Thank you. Okay, item E is a work session goal setting that we tried once. Mr. Myers?
So looking at the calendar for the next few weeks, it's going to be hard to squeeze in another Saturday session. What I would like to propose for the council is that we schedule a 6 o'clock work session on the 26th of April. And we will bring back to the council an abbreviated goal list similar to what we have now, but much abbreviated and simplified, and pull in some of the discussions that we've already had, affordable housing, transportation, stuff like that, and have a more abbreviated goal document that will include some of the things that we talked about as well in the work session already, and bring that for you to talk about and then possibly adopt at the council meeting on the 26th.
Does that work for everybody? Mr. Stennett?
What's our agenda like on the 26th? Just curious.
It's
any
not as
outlook for that?
good question, thank you. It's not as hairy as tonight. It's much milder so far. It doesn't have as much stuff on it. So
does that work then? Okay.
So 6 o'clock next
6 o'clock
meeting.
next meeting. Okay, concerns of council. Mr.
Try
Urban?
to keep it brief, sorry. Just want to give a quick update on the Land Economic Committee meetings. We met today, had some good discussion, presentation from, I believe it's the city manager from Bonita, talking about economic development up there in their main street and kind of how they've gone about it. It was insightful. Mr. Stewart and Mr. Myers were also present. Mr. Myers gave a presentation on the fiber network here in Cottage Grove, and how we're, what was the word? Geniusly poised from one of the other members who deals in broadband. But just really want to kudos to how we're positioned as a city in terms of that fiber connection. And then lastly, the word on the SBC is that they still have money. They are really wanting to be the first point. Small Business Association Representative Mike Killen, to, if there's any business needs, that they be the point of contact to match needs with solutions. And they have a website that is not coming to the top of my mind right now, although I'm hoping Mr. Myers or Mr. Stewart might be able to fill that in. And then in terms of a concern of council, just from my neighborhood, we approved another MUPPET that's right down the street from me today. We are almost double the number of housing per year that we're intending to get. And so just a real world anecdotal comment, really neat couple with young kids are moving. They're at the corner of East Van Buren and 10th. And the comments that I didn't hear that I overheard was that, just the amount of increase, the perceived downgraded and livability of their home with their family with a new development going in, and they put up their home for sale, and that's kind of sad to see happening. So that really got me reconsidering things. So there was talk about having an advisory committee for number one, discussing affordability with a capital A, I think it was a split, but also when we need to look at turning the dials on things, having a refreshed conversation about what livability in Cottage Grove looks like, and what we are going to look like into the future. So I would hope that we would have that.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would love to have a work section on MUPPET and look at that more. Now that it looks like it's taking off, and see what we can do to fine tune it and work what works better or best for the community. I think that'd be great. I would love to do that. I also want to reiterate, like I did at the last meeting, also what Bruce Kell said. We did a lot of talk today about housing, and I support Bruce in seeing that great facility that we put a lot of money and time into, the warming center, and turn that into some type of transitional housing, some type of program. I know there's got to be some type of grant out there to get somebody that could live out there and host that and work with people to help change their lives. I think we have a state-of-the-art facility, and I really hate to see it get taken down without a chance of trying to do something with transitional housing. Some good news. My mural committee, Buster Keaton Mural Committee, we have reached the $7,000 mark on fundraising. I might have another 1,500 coming in, and I just ordered 100 T-shirts to sell at an amazing price. So we're gonna make some more money there. I have talked to Jesse, the man that's going to clean the mural. That's going to be happening here in about 2 weeks. It's taking a little bit longer than I wanted to, but it's going to happen. Me and the artist have spent plenty of time. We have picked out a lift, and we're hoping sometime the very beginning of next month to start painting on that. And one last thing I want to say, there was a mistake in the paper, made it look like I got the grant that we possibly can get if we complete this mural on time. And it was Amanda Ferguson that got that grant. She gets all the credit for that. I want to thank Amanda for helping me so much on this project, on top of everything else that she does. I don't know where she finds the time to deal with it, but thank you, Amanda, for working with me on that. And the downtown cleanup will be coming up. I have a meeting with Teresa Cowan, since Pete is, I used to do this with Pete, get everything lined up. I have 4 nurseries. I got plants and shrubs coming, and I've got 4 churches that are going to come out in force to help clean downtown and get it spit shine, so we can really shine in these ending COVID days, hopefully. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the time.
So in lieu of time, I'm just going to make it brief. Mr. Fleck.
Oh, I apologize. I was just going to say that, to thank you to Bruce Kelch about mentioning the shelter. I'm still waiting for the county to give me some reports, but I will present a final report to the council. I just wanted to mention that. I'm just kind of waiting to get the data from the county because they did it in a different way this year.
So I just want to report real quick on something I feel needs to be reported. That since our last meeting, Rick Ham from Wildish wanted to meet with me at the 8th and Taylor intersection that's in question of how we got to that point. Mr. Stewart went up there with me and sat down and went over the prints. There's a lot of my concerns of, I think, of how we got there, but we're there. And I think Mr. Ham does a really good job in his work, and he takes a lot of pride in it. And we could put blame wherever, but I don't want to put it on his shoulders alone. And so I think we got some opportunities to learn a lot. I think we could be out there as counselors and looking at it closer and throwing up red flags. I know Mr. Ham said he had red flags when it was in there, but by the time that they laid the forms and the concrete was poured, it is what it is. I think staff could be up there more and making sure those projects. So in our future, I think we have a good opportunity to to take this and, you know, it is what it is, and we got to make it right now. But, you know, everybody's doing their job. It's just one of those unfortunate things. And so I hope that gets back to Mr. Ham. So with that, we will move on to business from city manager, local foods, local places, community action plan update. Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. And I promise to keep this quick since I know we're all really tired and you don't want you don't want to talk about it forever. However, I want to use this as an opportunity to introduce those of you who were not familiar with this program and remind you of where we came through it, and if offer an opportunity for you to come and talk to me about it at any time in the future if you want more information on it. Got to see if it will actually. There it goes. Okay. So this year we were really lucky, actually in 2019, to be chosen as one of the 16 communities to become a local foods, local places community by the EPA. We're the first city in the state of Oregon to be chosen to participate in this program. It was originally designed around the Appalachians in order to try to help those communities that were really struggling, and it was a program that focused entrepreneurial work around local foods initiatives. And so we felt that with all the work that we'd already been doing, we were really well situated to take the next step in our programs, and they agreed. Specifically, local foods, local places help cities and towns across the country protect the environmental and human health of their areas by engaging with local partners to invest in our neighborhoods with our local food systems. It specifically looks at boosting economic opportunities, improving access to health and healthy local foods, and revitalizing downtowns in the process. So we had a lot of things that were already on our plate that they were really excited to work with us for. What they do is they bring a bunch of federal and state staff to you in a 2-day workshop. We happen to do it virtually, of course, because of COVID. And then they meet together with the local stakeholders and then develop over a 2-day really very multi-interactive workshop an action plan that lays out specific steps for how we're going to integrate our local food systems better into our economy specifically. Our workshop was held November 5th and 6th of this last year. It included a virtual tour of the community, which if you ever want to see it, I'm happy to show. There are lots of really pretty pictures. There was a lot of case story sharing, a lot of group exercises, and some action brainstorming around the 4 main goals that our local steering committee created. And specifically, the overarching theme was how do we build a resilient local and regional food system? We had over 60 people come to this 2-day workshop, which I was really excited about. And our facilitators, who primarily came out of the Northeast, were excellent. We were the 16th of the 16 communities to do a virtual workshop, so they had at that point all of their tools really hammered in. They really knew what they were doing. We ended up developing, as I said, 4 main goals. And we have an action plan now that is available for your review. It's on the city's website. I have printed copies if you're interested as well. And they focus around 4 main goals that have a laundry list of typically 4 or 5 action items off of each one of them. The first one was really focused on how do we support our existing commercial kitchens and food incubators, and how do we help create new ones? So we have Bohemia Food Hub within the community, and they are doing really amazing work as an incubator space. They have about 40 different employees at present, and they are transitioning now from being a private to being a nonprofit that is really focusing more on developing entrepreneurial opportunities for youth and BIPOC, and really the Latinx population in particular. And they are really doing amazing work. We also want to develop a commercial kitchen in the basement of the armory, which is the picture to your lower right. And so we have an opportunity to see how we can use the armory commercial kitchen as an accessory to the things that are already happening within the community. Action 2 was really focused on food security and public health. Peace Health played a large part in our advisory committee through Ana Maria. And we also were really working specifically with the South Valley Farmers Market and the programs that they have to try to reach out to people. We have a picture here of Community Sharing's community garden because we have a thriving community garden program as well. Peace Health is looking at creating a more thriving Veggie Our X program is going to be one of the programs coming out of this project. We have a lot of movement already in food security and public health that we are already implementing many of the recommendations that are coming out of this one. The third one was really trying to increase involvement of Cottage Grove's underrepresented and immigrant populations. And that's BIPOC, but as well as youth, in local food and placemaking initiatives. So I have a picture here of the wonderful family who is doing Tikal Latin Flavor. They also opened up a retail store downtown, and if you haven't gotten an opportunity to see it, please do. They're one of the success stories that's coming out of the work that we have been doing that was really started by the conversations we were having with this project. And to see it come already into fruition, even before the ink was dry, was really amazing. We are also working really well with the school district and Horta de la Familia to develop a food garden, community garden at Bohemia Elementary School. And I'm really excited about that project. That will see hopefully 40 to 50 families be able to grow enough food to feed their family for the entire year. And that's really exciting. And they specifically focus on the Spanish-speaking population, although the entire community is available and welcome to participate in those food plots. And then we've also been working with our local Native American group and developing interpretive panels that talk about local foods and first foods. We've developed 3 panels thus far. They've been showcased downtown in some of the storefronts that were vacant, and we're going to move them into the library once the library opens as one of the art projects there. So we've already been working, and we're, as you can see, the conversations regarding local foods, local places engaged a lot of people and really inspired a lot of work already. And then finally, our 4th action plan goal was to build stronger supply chain connections for our farmers and food producers with both local and regional markets. And this is really the nexus of how we really drive the economy, and this will take more work and will be the work that we do over the next couple of years. We want to figure out how to better integrate our farmers and our food producers with our restaurateurs here, but also help them get into the food markets in Portland. Be that integrating more clearly with the marketing methods that are already out there through Travel Lane County and through Travel Oregon, but also creating either what we may call the Cottage Grove Food and Farm Network or a South Valley Food and Farm Network, something like that that actually integrates that and helps bring those producers more into the fold. So that's what we're looking at thus far. It's very exciting. I wanted to thank all of our local foods and local places steering committee members. This laundry list of people were the wonderful people who participated in the pre and post sessions, and then we had a number of people who joined us after the workshop in November to fine-tune those action items and get our action plan together. Our consultants were Holly Fowler and Jason Espy, and I said they were really excellent. We were really lucky to have the EPA come out and invest this work. And I'm hopeful that the concentration of work that they did here with the USDA as well and the EPA and the other federal agencies investing so much time in Cottage Grove will keep us on their radar for a while, and we'll be able to access some of that federal funding for future projects. And that is the end of my presentation. Fast enough for you?
Wow, this is impressive.
Any questions for Amanda?
Pretty impressive.
Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate
Please,
it.
and if you have any further, if you want any further information, I really encourage you to read the plan.
Okay, report from city manager.
I think I can get through it in about an hour, so if you'll bear with me. No, I just have a few items. Just want to remind one council member that they do need to do the SEI. I believe there's one that hasn't done it yet of the council, so if you've done it, you know who you are. If you haven't, then you know who you are. Please get it done before Thursday the 15th. That is the deadline. I want to remind people also on the 16th, Friday, the 16th is the deadline for the If I Were Mayor contest. So hopefully we will have some applications. So if you know of any youth that would be eligible to apply, please encourage them to get their applications turned in by Friday the 16th. We are also moving forward with vaccinations. If you know of anyone in the upper ages that have kind of gotten squished as they increase the eligibility opportunities, please encourage them to call our community center, Teresa or Jessica, and set up an appointment to get vaccinated. It's easy, it's simple. They don't have to load any apps. They don't have to go online. They can use the telephone, and Teresa or Jessica will call them back and set up an appointment to work with them. They are also doing some vaccinations on Wednesday. It's scheduled anyway to do some Johnson & Johnson ones because there's some people that specifically want that, but they'll be doing them on Friday as well. And on Fridays, you usually get what you get. But I think they're in the Moderna right now and using it. So we really, if you have an opportunity to thank David over at McCoy's for helping us do this, please thank his staff and him for their participation. They're going out of their way. If people can't get out of their cars and somebody drives them there, he'll go to the car. If they can't come to the vaccination clinic, he'll actually go to their home. So he's been great to work with as a partner on this, and it's really being run well. Watch for this week or early next week for our announcement from Community Lending Works. Our grant program for small businesses utility assistance will be out. We approved the application form, so that should be happening here shortly. When it does come out, please encourage the Tier 1 group, which is those businesses that were forced to close as of governor's orders, and they are eligible for up to $1,000 in utility assistance and grants. And then after that first tier is done, that's about 2 weeks, then the second tier will start. And these are people who are small businesses that were impacted, may have closed, but were impacted or restricted. And they're eligible for up to $400 total in assistance for utility bills during the COVID pandemic, starting March 1st of 2020. So it goes back to that. They'll just need to bring in utility bills. Mindy is ready to print those out and send them digitally to people, and or print them out and give them a hard copy so they can include that with their application. They just have to show those utility bills. The website is Lane Business Link through the SBDC, Lane SBDC. So if you want to look at it, it lists all of the different resources that businesses could go to. This is what Rob Killian was talking about today at LEC. So make sure you're aware of that Councilor Irvin had pointed out. To talk about transitional housing a little bit, we are not interested and probably not willing to really use the pallet shelters for transitional housing. Those are meant for, and they're built for, emergency housing situations. They wouldn't hold up. They probably would not be good housing for a more permanent transitional housing arrangement. We are in discussions right now with Square One and the county and trying to find different funding sources to do a transitional housing project, which would be a more traditionally built structure, similar to the pallet shelters, but a little more durable and more, not looking like you're living in a plastic balloon or bubble, a little more friendly looking and actual traditional home looking. And we're working on that. We're trying to explore some various interesting different approaches. that possibly the transitional housing, if we do look at the site where the pallet shelters were, where the warming shelter was, could the transitional housing project and those operating it then move to do the warming shelters, so that we'd be giving those people in the transitional housing an opportunity to have some volunteer or staffing opportunities that would give them some job training and some skills and be a part of that as well. So we're exploring those options. We'll see what happens and keep you apprised as we discuss more of that and come back. But I do want to really discourage the thought of using the pallet shelters for transitional housing. I don't think they would work very well. They're not as durable as a more traditional built home, or really cabin would be, and provide the better warmth and better long-term livability. So that's what we're looking at, but we do have the infrastructure there, and those structures could be constructed there relatively easy as well. So we're still exploring those options. We'll be bringing that back and talking more about that as we move. And that's all I've got.
Mr. Roberts.
What's the latest on the other streeteries?
Staff is going to be attacking those soon. We're hoping to go faster than the Jack Sprat's streetery, because they've already built one. We've had to modify the Axe and Fiddle one a little bit, and they're working on that because they're moving it from Main Street over onto 7th. But once they get those modifications squared away, they'll get under construction on that as well. They kind of went and did some work in the armory. They got the beam, and so they wanted to get it in to support that porch and floor and get that put up. And so they did that real quick, and they'll be coming back to the streeteries and trying to get those addressed. They had to wait for some lumber, I think, too, coming in, or some things that were on back order, so they moved to another project temporarily.
Thank you.
Okay. And so just remind everyone, business after hours, 5:30 at the Aviation Museum on Thursday night. And I have another meeting at the same time, so I don't know if I'll make it, but I'll try. With that, we're adjourned.